Carlo and Brendan here from Games, Brains and a Head-Banging Life, gbhblofficial.com for short. And it is, of course, track by track as they return to this series, one of our favorite black metal bands in the world, or metal band in the world, to be honest. I don't think we have to specify the genre for Cradle specifically to put them in their favor. It is, of course, as I said, Cradle of Filth. And we're taking a look at their most commercial record, commonly seen that way, the most commercial record, I think, and certainly featuring songs that were a bit more radio friendly. It is Midian, the 30th of October 2000 released album through Music for Nations. I'm not going to even really say to you, oh, what's your familiarity with this album? Because it's pretty obvious.
Mm-hmm. It is what you would expect from a person who's a fan of Cradle of Filth.
Yes. If you've seen Cradle of Filth live, you'll have seen songs from this album played live, one in particular probably more than any other. And dotted around are often some of the forgotten gems, if you want, so to speak. And one in particular that we will get to at the end, I suppose, when we get to that. Intros then, basically. It's At the Gates of Midian. It's an instrumental introduction. This is, simply put for me, one of the best Cradle of Filth album introductions they've ever done. To date, still, and even up to this point. It is so epic sounding, hugely gothic and built in haunting fashion. It's, to me, a great encapsulation of what this album is about and what this album's sound is.
Yep, I agree. Typically, I mean, they do a lot of intros like this and do little instrumentals sort of across their albums anyway. But it is a very, very good way to start an album off. In terms of sound, yeah, definitely with like the sort of keys or piano melodies and organs. But the thing is, I know it's played on the keyboard, right? But you always sort of say organs and pianos, but it's just keys with like a fucking effect button. At the end of the day, like it sounds brilliant and it sounds like the rest of the album. But it also like it's just one of those cool intros you get with an album where you listen to the intro and you're like, yeah, like something cool's about to go down. Like, do you know what I mean? If the first time listening to this album you hear that, you probably gets you in a really good kind of frame of mind and thinking like, all right, this is promising. Where's this going?
Yeah, one of the things I always remember from it, it's weird probably to talk this much about an introduction, an intro, but this is the kind of case, is that you kind of used to Cradle of Filth when you use cleaner sort of chanting sort of awls and stuff like that. It tends to come from the female side of things. At the Gates of Midian has a man's voice doing that. So it kind of immediately stands out as a bit different. You know, it's one of those you almost want to go back and be like, oh man, I wonder what this must have been like. If you've been listening to Cradle album by album by album, and then you hit this point, what that felt like.
I mean, like kind of history of it, I'm sure you know anyway, but from what I gather, whether it's from people I disagree with or people I agree with, most people, I think, publicly class this as their kind of masterpiece album. You know, and all the people that don't like modern Cradle, whenever, you know, in the same way that people say, oh, Metallica did nothing good after Injustice, or Machine Head did nothing good after Burn My Eyes. Yeah, this is the album that they always say, like they peaked at Midian after that. Do you know what I mean? So like it's a well-respected album, but like I don't know. I just feel I feel like it's weird when you're listening back to it, right? Because you know what's coming. Even though some of it I don't like, some couple of songs I was like, shit, I ain't listened to this for years.
Yeah.
You know? But I just feel like you try and put yourself back in that mind frame, don't you? And like when you listen to this, I think like I don't remember, like, I mean, 2000, I'm trying to think, I probably was listening on CD, so I would have probably been playing end to end, so I must have like heard the track, like, do you know what I mean? But I don't remember what my reaction is. But reacting, like listening to it now, you're like, yeah, that must have been awesome, man. You know, and like, yeah, you just feel, I don't know, you feel like this could be good. It's gonna be good.
Indeed. And it kind of flows nicely, really well into the first proper track, Cthulhu Dawn, a very familiar Cradle of Filth track. It's been played live on numerous occasions as well. And it's a meaty number with frantic energy. This is a fast-paced one with heavy layering of keys, which thankfully doesn't distract from the pure fire this track has. It's one of the strongest riffy tracks of the entire album for me. It's one I've heard loads, but I still thoroughly enjoy it.
Yeah, same. Like the intro to the song, nice and speedy. Guitars are great. Got loads of layered atmospherics, production quality of this album overall. Like like with the intro now, with this one, for me, like I don't know if it's good production because I'm not like a fucking producer or engineer or anything like that. But I know when I listen to it that I like the sound. I think it suits, you know what I mean, the mood. I'm like, yeah, with the church kind of organs and all the sort of different layers they've got in there. Lots of stuff we love about Cradle, female choir back in, but also quite like a vicious one in terms of like Danny's vocals. So I think it's like a really good fiery start to the album.
Agreed. Saffron's Curse. This has got some of my favorite keyboard melodies on the album on it. Super gothic and eerie, but light and listenable too. This is one of the more expansive tracks in the album, featuring blazing blackness and melodic drops with the whispered female and male vocals playing off each other and the keys there strong. It's one of the forgotten greats of this record, I think, because you kind of jump from Cthulhu Dawn and to what come after it. And I think this gets forgotten about. The only criticism I've got for it is that it probably could be a little shorter. I think it's just a little bit too long.
I didn't write it down, but I'd probably be like, no, it's a shame it's so short. I think this, I think it's a great song. It really is. Like, I love the melodies. I like the the deep vocals and the different tones that we're kind of getting. When it does kick off, it's very, very dark, very aggressive. I like the way it flows, which is something like I probably say a lot about Cradle songs because like I like the, I don't know, the way the tones drop and then something else comes in and then maybe the song changes direction a little bit. I very much enjoy that about a lot of Cradle songs, some of the bigger ones, some of the epic ones, and other ones on this album. In that, like, it feels like a bit of a journey, a bit of an adventure. It's not like a verse, chorus,
No.
keys, chorus, end. I'm trying to think what they do, but loads of really, really cool keys, melodies, which are obviously prominent very heavily in this album. I think they are in Cradle generally anyway.
Yeah.
However, maybe not always as far forward that it's sort of almost like one of the leading instruments, I think. Has a slowdown, big guitar hooks in that. It comes back in really, really heavy. And I was kind of, when you listen to any song on this album, and I was like, there's no song I don't remember, but then I'm like, this one I don't think I gave as much time. But listening back to it, I was like, you know what? And I literally wrote, this is not often mentioned, I don't think, in conversations about Cradle's greatest hits. But re-listening to this is probably one of their best.
Wow.
I loved it.
Big words. Oh, wow. Okay. And it's interesting what you say there about, like it's all familiar, but there are ones that you kind of just think, oh, this has never been given the time. And I had that strongly with Death Magic for Adepts. This is easily one of my least listened tracks from the record. And at first, I was genuinely not sure why, as it's got some big ass riffs and strong bass lines. But then as it goes on, I kind of realized, it's actually not that interesting a track overall. It keeps the pace hot, but it never really grows into anything hooky where I was like, oh, wow. It was like, at the end, I was like, oh, that's a solid track. And then I was like, that's why it never stuck in your mind when you compare to how many tracks have hooks in this album. Of course, this one's going to fall by the wayside.
Yeah, it's almost like we conferred. I wrote pretty short, actually. I just wrote, and it's another decent track. I really like the deeper vocal tones with the keys backing them. There's some strong guitar moments. It has its moments. It's got plenty of fire and heaviness at times, but it's just not quite as exciting, intense, or imaginative as the rest of the album.
There it is. Yeah,
but
sometimes
close to the word filler, I think, isn't it, on this album that you could probably put in there.
Great choice, filler. There it is. And I was very excited as well because when I was doing the album earlier on today at time recording, I'm looking at what was next and thinking, I just want to get through this track because A Lord Abortion is next. And it is still to date one of my all-time favorite Cradle tracks. That haunting introduction, the arrival of the keys, the crunch of the darker instruments and vocal roars excite like nothing else. This is one of the hardest sounding tracks with some brilliant layering of grander stuff. And then you have that, what I think is one of the best melodic drops where Danny's vocals have this really devilish sound, like he's really stretching his voice where he seems to almost run out of breath on certain lines and he gets quite pitched. I mean, it's high pitched obviously all the time, we know this, but there's an extra, just like almost desperation at the end of certain words that just cut straight through. Lord Abortion is one of my favorite tracks overall, let alone the album.
Yeah, it's a phenomenal song, and love the intro, really dark and intense, builds slowly into a pretty filthy track, very intense and aggressive. The vocals are exceptional, very menacing, very powerful. The drums and the riffs are cool, and dare I say it, the chorus catchy. The catchy chorus, that little "Call Me Lord Abortion, the Living Dead" bit, it's like that's actually catchy. This is sing along chorus, man. That like weird slowdown you're talking about as well. Love that. I love his vocals in that. But I also love how it kind of builds from that back up again, just bit by bit, Pink coming in, and all of a sudden you got the full band going, full choir back in it, and it just sounds fucking huge. Really, yeah, brilliant song, fantastic.
If you've not heard it, you must go out of your way to listen to it now. We both feel the same. Okay, Amor y Morte, a less complex but still quite riffy headbanger. That I don't know. I thought this was weird. Maybe it's just me. Maybe you caught it as well. I thought the production on this one was a lower quality than the rest of the album. I don't know. I mean, I'm just listening to it on a streaming service, so I couldn't identify anything wrong there. But it was notably like lower quality. But I still like this track a lot. I think it's got some great instrumental harmonizations.
Yeah, I'm a fan as well. I didn't notice anything myself, particularly around the production, but as a song overall, love the guitars in the intro. I like the dark, deep, kind of whispery vocals. It's got a cool flow to it. It's nice and heavy, but it's got some rhythm to it as well. Lots of little transitions, which I'm a fan of generally in music, but especially when Cradle do it. With some nice dark sort of slow down sections, and it builds back up. I think the drums are great. Lots of choirs, all the stuff that you kind of want, really. With my only kind of, it wasn't really a negative as such, but I thought it was weird that it's got a solo in it, but the solo it just comes out of nowhere. It's like it doesn't build into it. It's just suddenly the guitar starts screeching and then goes into a solo, and you're like, oh, okay. It's a cool solo though. It's just and it does really well transitioning back into the track, but it just sort of appeared out of nowhere, which I thought was a bit odd.
No, fair enough. Then we get another instrumental. It's Creatures That Kissed in Cold Mirrors. It's an intermission heavy on the gothic cold vibes that the album has been completely about. It kind of just fits the overall theme and serves as a palate cleanser in anticipation for what would come next, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah. Sometimes one of the best things about Cradle songs, even instrumentals, is the names. I don't really like the name Creatures That Kissed in Cold Mirrors. It's just such a I don't know, a Shakespearean, almost poetic way of saying like something,
There is almost a theatre-esque feel to this record in regards to the gothic. Like if this was, I'm not saying it should be, if this was a weird soundtrack to a variation on something like Frankenstein, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you could believe it to a degree.
But as an instrumental goes, it's another decent instrumental. It doesn't like damage the album or the flow or anything. It sits in nicely, which is kind of the point, I guess, a little bit. It's just to give that little breather, move the story on. Musically, it is what you'd expect, and it's orchestral based, plenty of tinkling kind of keys, a little bit of choir and all that. It's fun to listen to. You kind of like to be, the thing with these sorts of songs, right, in modern times, is it's very rare that you kind of go, oh, do you know what I'll do is I want to listen to a song on the way to work in a car. I'll stick an instrumental on from the middle of a Cradle album. If I was putting this album on, I'm going to like 3, 4, 5 different songs in it. I'll probably skip the instrumentals, despite the fact that they're really good.
Yeah, of course you are. Exactly that. It's not on the playlist. And neither is this track these days, I'm afraid. Her Ghost in the Fog. If I never hear this song again, I wouldn't mind. That's purely because of how overplayed it is. Because of that accessibility that I talked about at the start. This is only a single. It's easily one that most people who, even if they're not fans of Cradle of Filth, will have a lot of familiarity with. However, none of this means it's a bad song. It is not a bad song. It is a very clever Cradle of Filth track because of its accessibility, while also having levels of intensity that come from the black metal side of things. Who doesn't find themselves sing along with that chorus? It's just an overplayed thing. That's all it is for me.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It has been played a lot, but I'm still down with it. I still love it. I still wouldn't skip it in a shuffle. I think it's phenomenal. I think it's one of their
you wouldn't skip
songs.
it?
No, I wouldn't.
Really?
I'd sing along to every part of it happily. listening to it. Love the intro. I think it kind of creates a picture. I quite like the Doug Bradley intro as well. It's dark and sinister, kind of cool. I kind of got like maybe it's because of that, but I kind of got like, I suppose, a bit of a second win for this track when the new album came out, Existence is Futile, because Her Ghost in the Fog is part of a trilogy of songs that all feature. There's 3 songs actually on this album that feature Doug Bradley, but they all feature Doug Bradley, and it's meant to be like a story, with the most recent one being Sisters of the Mist, on Existence is Futile. So when I listened to that, at that point, I didn't know this was part of a trilogy. I didn't really understand what the trilogy was about, and I suppose, and because of that, I went back and then I spent time like listening to the rest of it and sort of trying to imagine it as a trilogy. So maybe that gave it a bit of a second wind with it,
No, but it's cool to have that.
Yeah. I think it's got everything like that you said already. It's got everything I love about Cradle. It's got great guitars. I think the story in this one is dark and, say beautiful, but I don't mean it like in that way. It's the cradle version of beauty, isn't it? But it's everything I want in a song, and I suppose it's everything that I felt like Death Magic for Adepts isn't. It's just imaginative. It twists and turns. It goes in different directions. It's got great vocals. Again, catchy-ish kind of chorus to a degree.
Yeah.
You can see why. I mean, if you was going to pick a single out in this album, it'd have to be that one, wouldn't it? It's got that back and forth. Another thing I absolutely fucking love: female vocals, Danny, back and forth.
Yeah,
I think it's Sarah Jezebel Diva or something like that on this one, on this album, because it changed quite a bit in that album.
Changes a bit, yeah.
But so yeah, for me, look, this is like, it's not quite the epitome of everything I want from a Cradle of Filth track. That's coming in a minute, but it's a very close runner up to it.
No, everything you say, I agree with. It really is. I almost hate saying the fact I just don't really want to hear it again. And I just want to give a shout out as well for its use in the video game Brutal Legend. It is played at a phenomenal point in that game. I remember it strongly, and great use of it, basically. Just wanted to mention that. Then we get kind of another intermission as well, so to speak, or a little break in it. It's Satanic Mantra, and it's 50 seconds of vocal horrors that increase in volume and voices. It's very cool, and it's just a mantra. Archangel, Dark Angel, lend me thy light. Through death veil till we have heaven in sight is a part of the lyric. And different voices growing in kind of stature and grandness. It's quite evil.
It is, yeah. Yeah, like there's not a lot you can say about it. It's literally just voices, like you said, builds in power and then drops off right at the end to like a whispered kind of finish. But yeah, you don't really want to say anything too bad about it, because it does kind of actually feel a bit like a satanic mantra.
It's cool. I think it's cool.
I mean, I think if I said something about it, I'll get struck down by Satan or something.
Yeah, how many? It's been 23 years since this album, so no one's dead from it yet, as far as I'm aware. And then we hit the penultimate track, and this is Tearing the Veil from Grace. And I'm just going to try and, in so many short amount of words, say the strength of what I feel about this. Fucking hell, it drives me nuts that this isn't talked about with the same reverence as all Cradle of Filth hits. It is one of the most epic songs they have ever produced. For the intro alone, the intro is goosebumps, but not specifically do that, because it speeds up and unleashes pure blackness. It's carnage overall, and then it slows it down and brings us back into this massive like organs, and just it's gobsmacking. It is one of the best Cradle of Filth songs overall, and the best song on this album. And it's still, we talked about this before. We often have, we're both pretty much agreeing with this. I'm going to let you obviously get in a minute, but it's just baffling to me how this isn't talked about in a same way.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen reaction channels on YouTube, like non-metal ones. In fact, one in particular, which I can't remember the name of, which is not very good for giving people a plug, but they're essentially to I guess more on the religious side of things, and people send them in stuff like this to listen to and get their opinion. And to be their credit, they break things down properly and look at it. And I've seen them talk for around 47 minutes about this song.
Really?
And about the level of research and detail that Danny has gone into here, the clever use of words, and that it's essentially a masterpiece in music, whether they like the content or not. You know what I mean? And that's really what it is. Like, it's essentially, for me, this is their greatest song ever. And it's my favorite Cradle song across their whole catalog. Loving very, very many of their songs. And I know you go through different ones at different times, but
Yeah.
I've never not loved this song. I've listened to this song more than Her Ghost in the Fog, is the truth I
Yeah, I
say.
reckon these days now,
And
yeah.
yeah, I still ain't bored of it. I don't think I'll ever will be, because I do think this is a Master of Puppets sort of Metallica moment. Like, this is the epitome of what a band can hope to achieve in terms of songwriting, the structure of it, the intelligence of the lyrics, the story it tells. It's all about the fallen angels and them deciding they've had enough, and then they take their battle to the gates of heaven. Yeah, that intro, fucking amazing. But when it comes back in halfway through, suddenly switches to the drums, and the choirs are back in. Like, it's proper hair raising, sort of like, oh my god, this is amazing. And absolutely 100% agree with everything you said. It shouldn't just be that it's talked about like with reverence across the whole of like metal community. It should probably be a subject at school. Like maybe one sort of like hourly lesson a week in music, where you sort of use this as an example of how to do shit right. you know
That's an incredible way to take from it. It is a special track. If you've never really bothered at the end of Midian, go check this one out. It's something else, which basically makes it impossible for Tortured Soul Asylum to really do anything afterwards. I mean, it's just, and the thing is, it's a disappointing finale purely because it's a good track. It's a good Cradle of Filth track. It's a good sort of overall vibe of this, with the speed, the heaviness, and all that there. But it's just an impossible task. They did this wrong. Tearing the Veil from Grace should have been a finale. If not, then there should have just been a minute or two instrumental outro to kind of just ease you out from taking it on. I don't think this is particularly stand out or that memorable, but it's not either a bad track. There isn't really a bad track on this album.
No, I mean the same thing. But I wrote like this poor song having to follow that. Obviously got Doug Bradley back for another intro. It's got loads of cool stuff in this song. It's got the whispery building intro. The vocals are good, nice and heavy at points, very bassy at points. It has plenty of back and forth with Danny and female vocals again. It's got a very, very cool solo as well. So it's a very, very strong track. I just like sometimes, and this is, I suppose, like it shows how unfortunate this poor song is, really, because I forget that Tearing the Veil from Grace isn't the album closer.
Yep.
And I was surprised when I went back and listened to this as a whole album rather than just picking and choosing songs from it. When I was like, oh shit, I thought it was the last track.
I remembered, so I had the same thing. So I brought up the track list and I was copy and pasting it into a Word document to start writing words. And I vaguely in my head remembered that what I just said there a minute ago, which was, I knew it wasn't the final track, but I thought there was a 2 to 3 minute outro. So when I saw Tortured Soul Asylum, I saw the length and went, that can't be what I'm thinking of. And then when obviously it starts, I was like, no, I've got this wrong. So yeah, clearly a bit of a problem for this track if we're both thinking this.
Yeah, it's one of those things, I guess, like, especially as for the most part in albums, you kind of tend to get like the big long epic is the closer of an album. But in terms of this and the story they're trying to tell is why there's another one after, I guess. It's a sort of concept thing, isn't it? It's like, well, no, it wasn't finished then. We've got more. But yeah, I don't know. Like, it's still a decent song. Like you said, there isn't a bad song on this album. It's just, even having listened to Tearing the Veil from Grace, I don't know how many times, like hundreds, thousands, fuck knows. Even having listened to it that many times, and then for this, listening to it again, when I then went to go into Tortured Soul Asylum, all I wanted to do was go back and restart Tearing the Veil from Grace again. Which is credit to that song, but yeah, and also just shows how unfortunate this one is.
It is unfortunate. I kind of think we've given the game away on at least 2 of our top 3 tracks that we're going to match up on. It's really that third one, I think, is where we might differ. So I'll take it away and I'll throw up my 3. Obviously, Tearing the Veil from Grace. The second one is, of course, Lord Abortion. And my third choice is Cthulhu Dawn.
My first is Tearing the Veil from Grace, of course. Lord Abortion, and my third is Her Ghost in the Fog.
Oh wow! Ooh. See, after what you'd said, I was almost certain you were going to bring in Saffron's Curse, but there you go.
Whenever I'm not sure about something, I put like the same number against each title. The ones I was debating actually was between Lord Abortion and Saffron's Curse.
Oh,
Her Ghost in the Fog and Terror in the Veil from Grace were the safe ones for me.
there you go. We got a lot of positive things to say about Midian's Cradle of Filth's Midian album. Do you feel as strongly as we do about it? Do you feel that maybe we're overrating Tearing the Veil from Grace in particular? You know what to do. Let us know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please help us out by giving us a thumbs up and hitting that subscribe button. If you really liked what you saw, consider donating to keep the website and channel running by buying us a coffee via our coffee page or picking up some merch from our Big Cartel store. You can check us out on gbhbl.com as well as via our social media, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, as well as listen to our interviews via SoundCloud, Apple Music and Spotify. Just search for GBHBL. Games, horror and heavy metal. What else is life for?